Now, our first guest this evening is the voice that's guided us through decades of news. He's been a trusted presence on every major story. And back in May, this icon said farewell to the Daily News Grind.
We are delighted and honoured, of course, to welcome to the 6 o'clock show, Brian Dobson.
Oh,
hello. How are you?
Catcher, lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. Now, we mentioned there, we only saw you retire this year after 37 years of broadcasting and, of course, being a trusted voice in all of our homes. So first things first, it's only right if we ask you, put the feet up. How's retirement going?
Well, just swimmingly now, I have to say. I couldn't have hoped for a better first few months of retirement. I retired in early May, so I'm coming up on 3 months now at this stage. And I retired a little bit early, so I timed it to coincide with the start of the summer. Now, I know an Irish summer doesn't always live up to our expectations. But,
very true.
But I think it's a good time of the year to make this big change in your life. Yeah.
Are you getting used to it, or are you still ticking to do something every day?
No, I'm quite happy to have a second cup of tea in the morning and just chill out. No, I found it very easy to adjust so far, definitely. Yeah.
Brian, now that you've retired, you have a new grandchild in your life, 3. Miles, how are you getting on?
We're getting on great. Yeah, we're doing a little bit of that, all right. Yeah, Miles is going to be, he'll be 3 in October, so he's a little over 2.5 now. And his mum Sophie and his dad Angelo are terrific parents. It's wonderful to stand back as a grandparent and watch how they're looking after him and how they're giving him so much love and care.
There, Brian.
And that's me reading to him now. He loves to sit up and he loves a book. And I suppose that's one of the things I'm going to look forward to doing more of in the years ahead.
And I believe you've another new arrival coming next year.
Yeah. Breaking news.
Breaking news.
An exclusive from the Dobson family.
That's
very
right.
exciting.
Yeah. So we're excited about that. Yeah.
Now, for many people in this room, including myself, I would remember you, of course, from anchoring the 6-1 News. You spent 2 decades anchoring the 6-1 News. So my question to you is, when you're engaged in a role for so long, is it hard to stay motivated, or could it be hard to stay motivated after many years on the job?
Well, I guess it might be, but for me, that was never an issue. And I suppose it's partly the nature of the job that every day the news is different. You never quite know from day to day what stories you're going to be covering. And that means there's always a freshness and a newness about the job in hand. So that's what kept me interested and engaged in the job over all those years. It was a long time, and I was glad at the end of it that I had that opportunity to move into radio as I did for the final few years of my career in RTE. And that was a great, I suppose, second act or third act, if you like, in terms of my professional
Before
career.
the curtains came down and actually transitioning to radio, Brian, you joined Morning Ireland back in 2017. Was that really for you going back to your old radio roots?
Yeah, I started out in radio. So I began broadcasting in pirate radio because back in the day, and we're talking about a long, long time ago, really there was no commercial radio, no commercial broadcasters. It was just RTE. And if you didn't have an opportunity to work there, you weren't going to work anywhere other than pirate radio. So I worked for a couple of years in pirate radio, and it was a great experience. It gave me the first step on the ladder, if you like. And then I went off to work for the BBC again in radio. So my whole early career was based around radio. So it was lovely to come back and bookend it, if you like, with that opportunity to work on Morning Ireland and then the News at 1 in the very final stages. Yeah.
Well, obviously, when it came back to flexing the radio muscles again, it means early morning starts, and both of us, we came from Ireland AM.
We know.
We understand it. I mean, just how tough were those early morning starts?
Yeah, I can't say I ever really adjusted to that. The alarm would go off at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we'd be at our desks by around 5. You go on air in Morning Ireland at 7 o'clock, and it's not so much an early morning, it's actually the middle of the night. And of course in the winter it's pitch dark, and it can often still be dark when you come off the air at 9 o'clock or only just getting light. So I don't think I ever quite adjusted to that. But actually what happened is, once you get into and I'm sure this has been your experience as well, working early mornings, once you're in the office, once you're in there and everybody's buzzing and the show is coming together, that really keeps you going. That carries you right through the
Brian, is it true you always had a suit and standby?
A suit on standby?
Yeah.
Well, I wore a suit on air. Yeah, okay, typically. Yeah. I got a bit more relaxed about it in later, post-COVID, the suit and the tie disappeared. But I found if I put on the glad rags, even at 4 o'clock in the morning, it just got me into the groove, and I think it was a bit of a help. Yeah.
Brian, you've worked with some incredible people over your career, including the late great Charlie Bird, and you were on air that day when Charlie Bird passed away on the 11th of March. What was it like working that day, knowing that it was something that you would have to report on?
Well, it was very difficult because it was very close and it was very personal. And the word had come through a little bit before we went on air. So, we had a chance to prepare our programme. And I suppose then that professional instinct kicks in. That despite the fact that this was a good friend and colleague of ours who passed away, we had to put together a programme. And so we had to start hitting the phones and lining up the guests and getting people who'd be able to talk about him and reflect a remarkable life. And I suppose that really carries you through. I mean, there was one moment during that programme that I did feel myself getting somewhat emotional when it was the lady from the Motor Neuron Association spoke about how Charlie's use of the computer to remember people, his voice, that had actually helped a lot of people to adopt that technology who might otherwise have found it, be embarrassed or whatever. And I thought that was an extraordinary, just a small part of his legacy, but an extraordinary part of his legacy.
Well, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, and Tommy Gorman, who's another great colleague and pal of mine, who passed away just very recently, and for very many of us, very unexpectedly. That there's always that grief and sense of loss,
and we always have that legacy too, which is amazing to look back on. But if we look at the current news cycle, I think it's fair to say we've had a fairly historic few days over in America. We have Biden pulling out of the race, the attempted assassination on Trump, and now Kamala Harris is in the running for the Democrats. Do you think Kamala Harris is in a good position to win?
I don't know. I mean, we're 4 months out from that election, and I'm not sure that they've done really polls that would reflect her presumptive candidacy as a Democratic nominee. So maybe it's a little early to say whether she can win or not, but I certainly think it's going to make it a much more interesting and exciting contest. And looking at it with my old journalism hat on, it ignites the story. It's really going to give, I think, a global interest in the outcome of the election. And I guess she's a very strong, has to be a strong candidate. And there's a big contrast, isn't there? So people have a clear choice here. Do we go for Trump or do we go for Kamala Harris? And they're very strikingly different individuals.
And back home, Brian, I mean, in terms of our own election cycle, there's rumours, of course, of an early election this year. Can you give us?
What do I think?
Can you give us the lowdown on it?
Well, if I was pushed on, I'd say the government will run the course through to the new year. I mean, I that's what they say they want to do, and and there's reasons why they might want to do that. There's other reasons why they might want to go early.
Budget forward this year.
They brought by a week, it's but they can also. And people have mentioned these by-elections that have to be held as well, but that can also be managed with a later date as well. So I mean, I'll take Simon Harris and Micheál Martin at their word and say that we'll have an election in the year. But, who knows? It might come sooner. Yeah.
I say despite, having retirement now, you do enjoy keeping your ear close to the ground, don't you? I'm
a news addict.
Yeah.
It's in your DNA, really.
I suppose one of the things, once then you pull back and I'm not working in the newsroom, I'm at a bit of a remove from it. There was somebody said to me, quoted a famous British newspaper editor called Max Hastings, who edited The Telegraph, and after he retired, somebody said to him, "What do you miss?" And he said, "I miss knowing." I miss knowing stuff that you know as a newspaper editor that you might be able to publish, you might be able to get it there, but you know about it. And I do miss a little bit of that knowing. I mean, I'm like any other member of the audience now. I'm tuning in at 6 or 1 o'clock or in the morning to hear what's going on.
Yeah. Now, Brian, while we have you here, we have to ask you about the new funding model for RTÉ, which was announced yesterday, because it's proving somewhat controversial. So what's your take on that?
Well, I think it's good that RTÉ has got some financial certainty. And I know that has raised issues elsewhere, including in this organisation and among other broadcasters. But RTÉ can now say, well, for 3 years, this is the funding we're going to have. And then it will have to deliver on a plan, which is actually a 5-year plan. So I presume the expectation is that funding commitment will run through for a further 2 years beyond the 3 years. But I think that's important. It is almost unique in the funding of public organisations that they have that kind of multi-annual budget. So I think that's a big positive. But I think it's pretty clear the government has bottled it on the licence fee. This combination of licence fee and direct exchequer funding is, I suppose, not what anybody particularly would have wanted.
I mean, Brian, did the government fudge it? Did Catherine Martin fudge it the other night?
Well, I think the government ended up fudging it in terms of the licence fee. I mean, the licence fee is something that's probably, in terminal decline, accelerated during the crisis last year when people, stopped paying, or some significant number of people stopped paying. So, but people are less and less likely to consume, media on TVs. We've all got our pads on our phones and all the rest of it. So it'll go down. And ultimately, there was a couple of options on the table. They could have had a media charge.
Is it rewarding bad practice, Brian?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's come in response to the reforms that RT has put in place, on foot of a whole series of as you know, investigations and outside inquiries, and on the basis of the reforms that Kevin Backhurst has outlined, then the decision has been taken.
Yeah. Now, before we let you go, we have to ask you, I know there's many news stories that you've covered, but which would you say is the most impactful to you, I'd say, personally and professionally?
Oh, well, I mean, definitely among the highlights is the Good Friday Agreement, which was the peace agreement in Northern Ireland and the political settlement there. That's more than 25 years ago now. And that, I think it's probably one of the very biggest stories in terms of an Irish story that I covered. No question about it. It was a transformative moment. 9/11, obviously, as an international story. I was in South Africa for the election of Nelson Mandela in 1994, which again was an extraordinary moment, moment of global significance. And I think that what is in common between Good Friday and the Mandela and the South African election is that it showed us that politics can work.
Yeah.
And that it can deliver solutions
and I believe you were hanging out with Fidel Castro as well. At one stage. We've done our research on
life you've lived.
There you go. Anyway, Brian is sticking around for the show. We can't have you leave without dishing you up something in the kitchen.
At least a sweet treat.
Yes, at least.
All right, after the break, we'll be getting up close and personal with the celebs putting their swings to the test, all in the name of charity, of course. We'll be back here in 3.